When putting this experience together, many of our team members had to lift up their voices unto heaven, pleading for mercies for their lives and for the lives of anyone who will come across this video. It doesn't matter who you are, but as long as you are called a Christian and reside in America, I want you to be patient, just a little patient, and you will thank God for this less than 40-minute video. This is the video you need to save you from your next step, not to lead you to damnation. Tell us where you are watching from so that we can pray along with you and your family. We love you, beloved. I will begin sharing this experience. Let me pray first. I always pray first. Heavenly Father, I ask you, in the name of Jesus, to help me say this the right way. Help me not to add anything and not to take anything away. Just let me tell it the way it happened. Amen. I have sat down to record this 3 separate times now, and each time I stopped partway through and started over. Not because the story changed. It has not changed at all. I stopped because I kept worrying about how it would sound. But I told myself, sit down, tell it plainly, the way you would tell it to a close friend across a kitchen table, and let it be whatever it is. Near the end of June this year, on a regular evening, I was not feeling right. A tiredness in my chest, a heavy feeling like something sitting on top of me. By the time evening came, I could not breathe right, and I remember telling my husband, something is wrong, something is really wrong. He drove me to the hospital. I remember the street lights passing over the windshield. I remember the pain moving into my arm. I remember trying to pray, small broken pieces of it. Lord, help me, Lord, please. And then I do not remember anything else. Not the hospital, not the doctors, nothing. I did not make it. Before we got there, before anyone could do anything for me, I was gone. I want to be careful how I say this next part, because I do not want to make it sound more exciting than it was. It did not feel like flying or floating. It felt more like the room around me simply stopped being real, and something else, something older and much bigger, took its place. I was standing. I do not know how, because a second before I had been sitting in a car gripping a door handle, but I was standing now, in a very large hall. It is hard to explain the size of it. It was not like a room in a house, or even a room in a church. It felt like being inside something ancient, something built a long, long time ago. The kind of place you might picture if you tried to imagine an old temple from the Bible, except far bigger and far older feeling than anything I have ever stood inside. It was getting dark in there. Not pitch dark, not a frightening dark, but the kind of dark that comes right before night fully arrives, when the sky still holds a little color, but the color is fading. That was the light in the whole hall, fading. Twilight, I suppose, is the word for it. I looked up, trying to find a ceiling, and I could not really find one. It was there, somewhere far above, but it faded into shadow the higher I looked, until it just felt like looking up into a soft darkness that went on and on. The floor beneath my feet felt solid and cool, like old stone worn smooth in places, the way stone wears down after many feet have crossed it over a very long time. I do not know how I knew that just from standing on it, but I knew it. There was a quiet in that place, a particular kind of quiet, not an empty quiet, but a quiet that felt full, like it was holding something, waiting for something. It reminded me, just a little, of walking into a very old church building early in the morning before anyone else has arrived. That same settled stillness, except far larger, far deeper than any building I have actually stood inside. And all around me, spread through that huge space, there were lampstands, gold ones, not all the same height, some tall, some short, some standing close together, some far apart. But all through the hall, as far as I could see, and each one had a flame burning on top of it. I stood there for I do not know how long, just turning, trying to understand what I was looking at. I was not afraid, which is strange to say, because if you had told me beforehand that I would end up standing alone in some enormous half-dark hall full of burning lamps, I would have told you I would be terrified. But I was not. I felt calm, almost too calm, like whatever part of me that would normally panic had been quieted down on purpose. I even tried to feel afraid, just testing it, the way you press on a sore spot to see if it still hurts. And there was nothing there, just a strange, settled peace underneath everything. I want to say, before I go further, that at this point I still did not know I had died. Nobody told me plainly, not right away. I only understood it later, piece by piece, the way you sometimes understand something true only after you have already been living inside it for a while. And then I started to notice that the flames were not all doing the same thing. Closer to where I was standing, near the center of the hall, the flames burned low, soft. Not dying exactly, but low, like a candle near the end of its wick. Still giving light, still giving warmth, but you could tell it did not have much left to burn. And here is the thing I noticed. Those low flames did not look sad. They did not look like they were struggling to stay alive. They looked, I do not know how else to say it, peaceful. Like they were finishing something, not losing something. Out near the edges of the hall and in the corners, the flames burned taller, brighter, almost wild. They moved fast. They threw long shadows against the walls. And there was a kind of hunger in them, like they still had a long way to go and they knew it. And then there was a third kind, scattered here and there through the hall, mixed in among the others. And this one troubled me the most, even before I understood what it meant. These looked like fire, but something about them was wrong. They flickered, they moved the way fire moves, but when I looked closer, I realized they were not giving off any real heat. None at all. They looked like light, but they were not really light. It was more like smoke pretending to be flame. I stood there a long time just looking, my heart starting to beat faster, because something in me knew this was not just a picture. Something in me knew I was looking at people. And then, from the far end of the hall, light started pouring in. I have to pause here, because I still get emotional remembering it. This was not like the light from the lamps. It was brighter, but it did not hurt to look at, in a way that does not make sense but is exactly how it was. It felt alive, if light can feel alive. Out of that light, a figure came walking toward me, wearing white. A white I have never seen in this world. Not paper white, not snow white. Something that seemed to shine from inside itself, rather than reflect light from somewhere else. I could not look straight at his face. I tried, but it was like trying to look at the sun, so I mostly looked down or to the side. But I knew. I did not need anyone to tell me. I knew this was Jesus. My knees nearly gave out. I reached for something to hold on to, but there was nothing there, and somehow I stayed standing anyway. I did not know what to say. I think I said something like, "Lord, what is happening? What am I looking at?" I did not try to hide my confusion. I did not understand, and I told him so. And that is when he began to show me. Not all at once, with words the way we use words. It was more like understanding filled me up, like water filling a cup, slow, gentle, patient. The way you would explain something twice to a child who is frightened. Han hungry lore. He first drew my attention back to the flames burning low in the center of the hall, and he revealed to me that these were the ones who had already served him a long time. Their waiting, as he called it, was finished. Not their salvation, not their place with him. The work he had given them to do here on earth, that part was finished. He showed me pictures as he explained, quick little pictures that came and went in my mind like slides. Someone sitting in the back row of a small church, praying quietly for people who did not even know they were being prayed for. Someone slipping a few worn bills into an offering plate, money they did not really have to spare, but gave anyway. A soul lying in a hospital bed, still able to whisper thank you to God even on the days when the pain was very bad. People nobody made famous. People nobody put on a stage. Just faithful, ordinary lives poured out quietly year after year with no audience but him. He told me their oil was low, not because they had failed him, but because they had already given so much of themselves. He said it gently, but it hit me hard anyway. He revealed to me that he was not extinguishing them. He was releasing them. There is a difference, and standing there, I understood the difference all the way down in my chest. He told me something else, and I want to be careful how I say it, because I do not think he wanted to frighten anyone with it. He revealed that there is difficulty coming, hard days ahead for the world. And he showed me that these particular ones, the low-burning, tired, faithful ones, would not have to walk through the worst of what is coming. Not because they were weaker than anyone else. He was very clear about that, and not because they loved him less, but because they had already finished the race set in front of them. He kept showing me pictures, one after another, slower now, as though he wanted me to really sit with each one instead of rushing past it. I saw an elderly figure sitting alone at a small kitchen table, Bible open, the pages soft and worn at the edges from decades of use. I understood, without being told directly, that this soul had spent years praying for people who never knew they were being prayed for. Co-workers from a job left behind long ago, neighbors who had moved away, family who had grown up and called less often than this heart wished they would. Nobody clapped for this life. Nobody wrote about it anywhere. But I understood heaven had been watching every single quiet morning at that table. I saw someone in a hospital bed, thin, tired-looking, an oxygen line resting under their nose, and even though the body looked worn down almost past its limit, there was something steady in the face that did not match how sick they looked. I understood this person had been sick for a long time, longer than most people could bear with any kind of grace. And yet most days still managed to give thanks for small things, a visit from a friend, a decent night's sleep, a warm meal. I felt my throat tighten watching, because I thought about how easy it is to complain when things are only a little hard, and how rare it is to give thanks when things are that hard for that long. I saw a much younger life too, worn out in a different way. The particular exhaustion of raising small children largely alone, some nights barely sleeping, and still finding a few minutes somewhere in the day to whisper a prayer over sleeping children, asking God to watch over them in the ways this heart did not always know how to. He revealed to me that people like these are so easy to overlook in ordinary life. Nobody writes songs about them. Nobody builds them a platform. But he told me that in his eyes, this kind of quiet, unnoticed faithfulness carries a weight the world has no way of measuring. Because the world can only measure what it can see. And most of what these people gave, they gave in secret, where only he was watching. He also told me something that surprised me, and I have turned it over in my mind many times since. He revealed that it is not only the elderly who are pictured by these low, gentle flames. He showed me it can happen at any age, whenever someone has genuinely finished the particular assignment he gave them, whether that assignment took 80 years or far fewer. He said the flame is not measured by how many birthdays a life had, but by whether the specific work he placed in its hands had been carried through to the end. I watched as he reached toward those low flames, and it was the strangest, most beautiful thing. They seemed to lift toward his hands on their own, as if they recognized him, as if they had been waiting for exactly this moment their whole lives without knowing it. There was no struggle in it, no resistance, only what looked like relief, like something finally being allowed to set down a weight it had carried for far too long. And he said, so quietly I almost missed it, that they had done well, and that it was time for them to rest. I stood there crying. I do not think I noticed I was crying until I felt the tears actually falling. It was not a sad kind of crying. It was more like relief, like watching someone finally get to put down something heavy they had been carrying for years. I thought about people in my own life who might fit this picture, faces coming to mind unbidden, and I found myself hoping, quietly, that when their own time comes it will look exactly like what I was seeing, a gentle, unhurried gathering up, rather than anything harder. I asked him, hesitating because I was not sure it was my place to ask, whether these ones would suffer at all before that gathering happened. He did not answer with a simple yes or no. He told me only that whatever they walked through before that moment, he had walked through it with them the entire way, close enough to feel, and that none of it would be wasted, and none of it would be forgotten by him. Then he turned and brought my attention to the flames near the edges of the hall, the tall, bright, restless ones. His whole manner changed a little. I do not want to say his face grew hard, because it was still full of love, but there was a weight to him now, as though what he was about to tell me mattered very much, and he needed me to carry it correctly. He revealed that these were the ones who had waited on him in a different way, not the ones nearing the end of their journey, but the ones who had learned slowly, sometimes over years, how to wait without rushing ahead of him. He showed me pictures again, someone sitting in silence during a season when it felt like God was not answering at all, and staying anyway, a soul holding on to a promise God had given long ago, watching it seem to take forever to come true, and refusing to let it go. People who had learned, the hard way, that waiting on God is not the same thing as God doing nothing. He told me they had been filled during that waiting. And then he said something that made my stomach drop a little. He told me I needed to understand what they were being filled for. He showed me more faces, mostly younger this time, though not all of them. I saw a life spent in an ordinary office job, someone who had prayed for years for a different kind of assignment, something they felt God had put in their heart to do, and who had waited through disappointment after disappointment, watching other people receive opportunities that seemed to pass this one by. I understood that all of that waiting had not been wasted time, even though it must have felt that way for a long stretch. It had been preparing something solid, something that could not be shaken loose easily, because it had been built slowly, patiently, through years where nothing seemed to be happening. I saw two people together, praying, and I understood they had asked God for a long time about something close to their hearts, and the answer had not come the way or the speed they hoped. I saw the strain that kind of waiting puts on a person, the tiredness around the eyes, but underneath that tiredness there was something steady too, something that had grown roots. He told me plainly. And I want to get this part right, because it stayed with me, the strongest out of everything I saw, that this kind of waiting had been building something inside these people that they themselves probably did not fully realize yet. He said it was not decoration, it was foundation. The hall grew darker while he spoke. I noticed the edges of the room, where those tall flames stood, were not just far away. They were exposed somehow, as if the walls out there were thinner, and something from outside was pressing in against them. I felt a chill pass through me, even though I did not exactly have a body there in the way I understand a body now. Something in me still reacted, still tensed, the way you tense up when you sense trouble coming before you can name what it is. He revealed that hard times are coming for these ones, not from outside armies, but from the very structures meant to keep order. He showed me, and I want to say this carefully because it troubled me a great deal, that rules and policies would be put in place, not designed to stop people all at once, but slowly, over time, to wear them down. Small restrictions here, more paperwork there, rules that make simple things complicated on purpose. Things meant to drain people's time, their money, their patience, little by little, until they had nothing left to give. I saw pictures of this too, though they were harder to hold on to clearly, more like impressions than solid images. Gathering places needing more and more permits, more approvals, just to meet the same way they always had. Small groups of believers having to explain themselves to officials who did not understand or care what they were doing, filling out forms, waiting on approvals that took longer every time, paying fees that kept quietly growing. None of it looked dramatic on its own. That was the part that unsettled me the most, honestly. It did not look like some big, obvious crackdown all at once. It looked like a slow tightening, one small thing after another, each one small enough by itself that a person might tell themselves, I can handle this one thing, without realizing how many small things were adding up underneath them. I saw a gathering told, politely, that their usual meeting hall was no longer available on such short notice, and then told the same thing the following month, and the one after that. I saw someone spend an entire afternoon on hold with an office that kept transferring the call, trying simply to renew a permission that had never once been a problem before. I saw a small group quietly stop meeting altogether, not because anyone forbade it outright, but because the cost of continuing, in time and money and paperwork, had simply become more than most of them could keep absorbing. He showed me this was the design of it, not a single wall thrown up all at once, but 100 small ones, so that no single moment would look like persecution, even while the sum of it was exactly that. And he told me the world would call all of this order, and lawfulness, and safety. But he revealed that underneath those words, it would really be a slow squeezing, meant to wear these people down until their light went out on its own, without anyone having to do anything dramatic at all. I asked him, or I think I asked him, I am not totally sure anymore if I spoke out loud or only thought it, but I asked, will they make it? He breathed out, gently, toward the closest of those tall flames, and I watched it bend under the breath, but it did not go out. It bent, and then straightened back up, stronger somehow, as though it had been tested by that breath and had come through it. He told me they would stand, not because they were clever or wealthy or had powerful friends. He was very plain about that. He told me they would stand simply because of what they had learned in all that waiting, that he himself does not shift or shake, even when everything around a person is shaking. He said, in his own quiet way, that anyone who has already learned to trust him through ordinary disappointment is not easily shaken by bigger disappointments later, because the same trust that carried them through the small waiting rooms of life is the trust that carries them through the larger, harder ones too. Then the vision changed a little, and I saw these flames were not only flames anymore. I know that sounds strange, but somehow I understood they were people now, and they were out speaking, in public places, in markets, in offices, even in schools and courtyards. I could not make out exact words, but I understood the meaning of what was being said. They were speaking about turning back to God, about a kingdom that is coming, about Him. Some looked young to me, students perhaps, standing in courtyards, speaking to small groups of others who gathered around, curious, some mocking, some genuinely listening. Others looked like ordinary working people, standing in break rooms or on street corners, speaking quietly but firmly to coworkers who wanted to know why they seemed so different lately, so unafraid. None of them looked like professional speakers. None had the polish you might expect from someone used to a stage. They just looked like regular people who had finally stopped holding back what was inside them. He revealed that they would carry a boldness that would not make sense to anyone watching. Not the kind of boldness that comes from confidence or training, but the kind that overflows out of someone after a long time sitting with God in silence. He told me they would keep speaking even when speaking about Him got them labeled as troublemakers, even when praying out loud got treated like a threat. even when simps loving people the way he taught them would be called something ugly by people who did not understand it. And then I saw hands reaching out of the shadows. I could not see faces attached to these hands, just shapes, uniforms maybe, I am not entirely sure, and they were grabbing at the ones who were speaking, pulling them away. I felt sick watching this part. My chest tightened again, almost the same feeling I had right before I died, and I wanted to look away, but somehow I could not. He told me they would be taken, and that the reasons given would not be the honest reasons. He said words like disturbing the peace, and words like extremism, would be used against people who had done nothing but speak the truth and refuse to stay quiet about it. He told me plainly that the actual reason underneath all of it would simply be that they carried his name, and would not let it go. I asked him, my voice shaking a little, whether this meant everyone who loves him would end up in a place like that. He answered slowly, and I felt like he wanted me to understand this clearly before I told anyone else. He said it would not be everyone. He said it would mainly be those who felt led, specifically individually, to speak out publicly in a bold way during that season. Not every believer everywhere, but a particular group given a particular assignment for a particular time. He told me not to cause unnecessary fear by making it sound like every single believer would end up behind bars, because that is not what he showed me. He showed me a specific group called for a specific purpose, and he wanted me to be careful and honest about that when I told it. I saw cells, cold-looking places, small windows, gray walls. But here is the thing I noticed, and it surprised me. The flames were still burning in there. Maybe even a little brighter, against all that gray. He told me something in this part that I have thought about every single day since I came back, so I want to get it exactly right. He revealed that being locked away like that would not silence these people, the way whoever locked them up believed it would. He told me it would actually put them exactly where they were needed to be. He said that in those cells, unable to speak out in public anymore, they would turn to praying instead, deeply, constantly, in a way maybe they never had time for while they were free. He told me their prayers in that place would go further than their voices ever could have gone on the outside. I watched thin lines of light, like threads, rising up out of those cells, higher and higher, past the ceiling of the hall, and I understood these were the prayers. And as those threads of light kept rising, I began to see new flames lighting up all over the darkened hall, in places I had not expected, small ones at first, catching like sparks jumping from one dry patch of grass to another. He turned to me then, and even though I still could not look directly at his face, I felt like every bit of his attention was on me. He told me he wanted me to carry a message back. He said to tell them to stay strong when the draining begins, and not to measure how faithful they are being by how comfortable or how free they feel. He revealed that the very pressure meant to put them out would end up being the very thing that made them burn hotter instead. He told me to say this exactly. So I am doing my best to remember his meaning, even where I cannot use his exact words, because that would not feel for me to claim. He told me that, from their prayers in that pressure, in that confinement, he would move. He said they would not see the results right away, that they would be praying into what feels like silence and darkness for a while. But he told me their prayer would be the thing that starts something, that one light kept alive, and a hard place would end up lighting 10 more outside of it, and that 10 would become 100, until what started as scattered points of light in a dark hall would become something the darkness could no longer cover over. He told me not to be afraid of the arrests, or the new rules, or the draining, that these people had been made ready for exactly this kind of time, and that even from behind walls, he would hear every single prayer, whether it came from a large gathering or a small, cold cell. I remember, at this point in the vision, hearing something like singing. Not words exactly, more a feeling of many, many voices agreeing together on one thing, giving themselves over, saying, in whatever way spirits say things, use me, whichever way you want. Free or not free, it does not matter, just use me. And then that part of the vision slowly faded, the way a scene fades in a film, and I thought it was over. But it was not. Jesus turned again, and this time his whole expression changed in a way that frightened me a little. Not because he looked angry, but because he looked so deeply sad. I followed where he was looking, over toward flames scattered here and there through the hall, the ones I had noticed earlier, that looked like fire but gave off no real heat. He walked toward one of them, and as he drew closer, I could see clearly what was wrong with it. Underneath that flame, the lamp itself was empty. No oil at all. Whatever was burning up there was not being fed by anything real. It was almost as if it were burning on its own smoke. He told me these ones broke his heart. And I am not exaggerating this at all, I watched tears actually fall down his face. I have never in my life seen anything like it, and I do not think I will ever forget it as long as I live, however long that is now. He revealed that these were people who used his name, who said the right words, who showed up in the right buildings, who even looked on the outside like they were serving him. But their hearts were far from him the whole time. He said they sang songs to him with their eyes closed, while their minds were somewhere else entirely, chasing after things that had nothing to do with him. He said they spoke prayers out loud while thinking about money underneath the words. He told me they wore his name like jewelry, something to be seen, while sin sat comfortably in the same heart, unchallenged, unrepented, hidden away. He showed me faces in this part too, though I want to be careful here because I do not want to describe anyone in a way that lets a real person be pointed at and accused. That is not what this was about, and it is not what he wanted from me. He showed me types, more than specific individuals, and he was clear that this was a warning meant for anyone who saw themselves in it, not a list of names to go looking for. I saw someone standing in front of a large crowd, speaking with total confidence, using his name again and again, and yet I understood there was almost nothing underneath the words. Just performance. Something rehearsed and polished on the outside while the inside stayed hollow. I watched this figure move across a stage with practiced ease, arms lifted at exactly the right moment, voice cracking at exactly the right line. Understood the crack was a habit, not a feeling. The crowd wept. The one on the stage felt nothing at all, and had felt nothing at all for a very long time, and had stopped noticing the absence. I saw someone else entirely different, much quieter, much more private, sitting in a pew every week, greeting people warmly, known throughout the community as a good and faithful presence, and yet carrying privately a hidden pattern of sin that had never once been brought into the light. Something grown so familiar over the years that this soul had nearly stopped feeling any conviction about it at all. I understood the loneliness underneath that hiding, the tiredness of maintaining two separate lives inside one single body, one for Sunday mornings and one for every day in between, and how exhausting it had become to keep the two from ever touching. He showed me a household where grace was spoken loudly over every meal, where a cross hung in nearly every room, and where, behind a closed door down the hall, cruelty was allowed to live comfortably, explained away afterward as discipline, or as tough love, or as something that outsiders simply would not understand. I understood that the words spoken over that table were not false because they were untrue in themselves, but because they had become a kind of curtain, hung up to keep anyone from looking behind it. I saw someone counting money late at night, alone, after service had ended and the building had emptied out, and I understood that the counting itself was not the sin. Someone has to count it, but that this particular counting was done with a kind of hunger, a running tally kept in the back of the mind through every single sermon, so that even while speaking of surrender and generosity from behind a pulpit, part of the mind never stopped calculating what was coming in. He showed me a gathering where a rumor was passed from one person to the next, dressed up carefully in the language of concern, framed each time as a prayer request, a heavy heart, an urgent need to lift someone up before the Lord. And I understood that underneath every one of those careful phrasings was simple gossip, wearing religious clothes so that it would not have to answer to what it actually was. I watched the same story travel through an entire room this way, growing a little with each retelling, each teller believing sincerely that concern was the reason, when the real reason, underneath, had never once been examined. I saw someone post something online, a photograph of open hands, a caption about surrender and trust, timed carefully for the hour when the most people would be scrolling, and I understood this figure had spent longer choosing the caption than actually praying that day, and that the appearance of surrender had quietly replaced the practice of it. I saw a workplace where someone spoke often and easily about faith, quoting verses in meetings, keeping a small devotional visible on the corner of a desk where others would notice it, while underneath, decisions were being made that shorted people who trusted this person completely. Hours logged that were not worked, credit taken for labor that was not this figure's own, small unfairnesses toward those without the standing to object. I understood that the visible faith and the hidden dishonesty had stopped feeling like a contradiction to this person a long time ago. They had simply learned to hold both at once, without noticing the strain of it. He showed me someone in a position of real influence, the specifics blurred, deliberately, so that no single person could be pointed at and named. making decisions in business that quietly hurt people who had no power to push back, while still wrapping every decision afterward in godly-sounding language, calling it wisdom, calling it stewardship, calling it faith. I saw money moved in ways meant to be difficult to trace, blessings spoken publicly over gains that never should have been blessed at all. And I understood the particular danger of this kind of flame, that it does not merely burn on nothing, it teaches others nearby to do the same, because it wears the appearance of success, and success is so often mistaken for approval. I saw someone teaching publicly about wealth and comfort and blessing, describing God's favor mostly in terms of what could be acquired, while people just outside the doors of that same building did not have enough to eat that week. And I understood this was not always deliberate cruelty. Sometimes it was simply a flame that had burned so long on performance that it had lost the capacity to notice anyone else's hunger at all. I saw someone kneel at an altar, weeping, hands raised, in front of an entire congregation, and I understood, with a kind of ache I was not prepared for, that this particular weeping was genuine in the moment and had genuinely happened many times before, and had never once led anywhere afterward. No change on Monday, no different choice on Tuesday. Only the same performance again the next time an altar call was given, because the weeping itself had become the whole of the practice, mistaken for the repentance it was only ever supposed to lead toward. I saw someone standing quietly at the edge of a fellowship gathering, smiling, greeting each person warmly by name, remembering birthdays, sending kind notes, doing every single visible thing a caring presence should do, while privately nursing years of bitterness toward specific people in that very room, a resentment so carefully hidden it had never once been named out loud, not even in this figure's own private prayers, so that it sat there year after year untouched, underneath a surface of perfect warmth. I saw a household preparing for a holiday gathering, decorations of the nativity set carefully on a mantle, a manger scene with every figure placed just so. And underneath the preparation, in the same house, an unresolved cruelty toward a family member that had gone on for years, never confronted, never repented of, simply managed and worked around so that the holiday itself could proceed smoothly. The way you step carefully around a stain on a carpet rather than ever actually cleaning it. He showed me this part slowly, letting each picture sit with me a long moment, because I think he wanted me to understand that this counterfeit flame is not only found in large, obvious places on stages and headlines behind pulpits. He revealed that it can be found in very ordinary, quiet lives too, in anyone who has let religious habit take the place of an actual relationship with him, without even noticing the substitution as it happened. He showed me that the substitution rarely happens all at once. It happens slowly, one small compromise at a time, until an entire life can be built around the appearance of him without ever once really turning toward him. I saw someone who led a small group faithfully for years, opening every meeting in prayer, closing every meeting in prayer, and who had, somewhere along the way, stopped actually speaking to God in between those two prayers entirely, so that the only conversation this person still had with him at all was the one performed out loud for others to hear. I saw someone who gave generously, publicly, was thanked publicly, was praised publicly for the giving, and who had quietly come to need that praise so much that the giving had stopped being about anyone else's need at all, and had become, instead, entirely about being seen giving. I saw someone in ministry leadership who counseled others toward humility and confession session after session, while never once bringing an old, specific, still unrepented failure of their own into the light with anyone, not a mentor, not a friend, not even, honestly, with him, carrying it instead like a stone kept in a pocket, present in every conversation about someone else's sin, and never once mentioned in connection with their own. He showed me this pattern was not confined to any one type of person, or any one setting, or any one kind of failure. He showed it in wealth and in poverty both, in public platforms and in private homes both, in leadership and in the quietest pew both, because the emptiness underneath a flame like this is not really about circumstance at all. It is about a heart that decided at some point, often so quietly it never noticed the decision being made, that the appearance of him was enough, and stopped reaching for the real thing. Then he showed me what happens next, further out, and this part was harder to watch than anything before it. He revealed that when hard pressure comes, these particular flames would bend first, and quickly, not because they feared prison the way the second group might, but because they loved money and comfort and appearance more than they loved him. And pressure has a way of finding out exactly what a person loves most. He showed me someone in real influence quietly changing a public position the moment it became costly to hold, explaining the change afterward in the softest, most godly language available, so that the reversal would sound like growth instead of what it actually was. He showed me a gathering place quietly closing its doors to those who needed it, most the moment helping them became legally complicated, while still keeping every banner and every sign exactly as it had always been. He showed me situations involving money that had gone missing quietly over years, covered every time in religious language rather than ever being confronted honestly. Blessings spoken over funds that never should have been blessed at all. Explanations offered that satisfied everyone except the truth. He could not finish speaking for a moment. He simply stood there, crying, and it was not for show, I want you to understand that. It was real grief, the kind that comes from loving someone deeply and watching them walk away without even realizing they are doing it. Then he reached toward my shoulders, and I felt it. Actual weight, actual warmth, even though I still do not fully understand how that is possible in the state I was in. And he told me, urgently now, his voice different, to tell people while there is still time. He revealed that he was not showing me all of this to shame anyone, but to warn them, because there is still time, right now, today, for anyone hearing this to turn back. He told me a separation is coming, that when he returns, he is coming for what is truly his. He said the ones who had waited faithfully, who burned with real oil, who let themselves be filled even through hard and lonely seasons, these he would gather to himself. But he told me plainly that the ones burning on empty, running only on religious activity with nothing real underneath it, would find themselves left in the very darkness they had chosen, without ever quite realizing they were choosing it. He said the smoke of all that outward religion would clear away eventually, and they would be left standing there holding empty lamps, still saying his name, only to find the door already shut. He stepped back from me then, and his face changed once more, from grief into something closer to urgent love, if that makes sense. Love that will not let something go without a fight. He told me to preach repentance, and to preach it with the same tears he was crying, not with anger, not looking down on anyone, but with real grief over what is at stake. He told me to tell people that he is holy, and that he sees what is hidden, not to frighten them for no reason, but so they would understand that nothing stays hidden from him forever. He told me to tell them that wrongdoing carried out under his name is a heavier thing than wrongdoing done openly by someone who never claimed him at all. He revealed that hidden sin, kept quiet behind a respectable, faithful-looking life, grieves him in a particular way, and he wanted people warned about that clearly without softening it too much. He told me now is the time, not later, not someday, but now, today, for anyone who recognizes themselves in that third flame to stop, to be honest with themselves and with him, and to trade that empty, self-made light for something real. He told me he is coming soon. He said it plainly, no hidden meaning, just those words, soon, and that the hour is closer than most people think. The whole vision started to shake a little after that, the way an image shakes right before it disappears. I could see one more time, all three kinds of flames together in that hall. The ones burning fierce and tall, ready for whatever pressure was coming, ready to pray even from behind locked doors. The gentle ones, being gathered home with so much mercy I can still feel it thinking about it now. And the pale, empty ones, still flickering, still pretending, not yet realizing how close they were to being left in the dark. Jesus stood there in the middle of all of it, his arms open wide toward the true flames, tears still on his face for the ones who were not. And I heard him say, in a voice that no longer felt like it was only in that hall, it felt like it was everywhere at once. Whoever has ears to hear should hear this. Turn back, burn true, because he is coming to take his own light home. And then everything went dark, all at once, like a light switch turned off. The next thing I remember, I was hearing voices and beeping sounds, and someone pressing hard against my chest, and I came back into my body, so suddenly it felt like being slammed into a wall. I was in the hospital. They told my husband later that I had been gone for several minutes. I do not have a medical explanation, and I have stopped trying to find one that satisfies me, because I know what I saw was not a dream. It has not left me, not for one single day since it happened. I am not a preacher and I am not a theologian. I am just someone this happened to, who feels responsible now to pass it along as carefully and honestly as I know how, without adding drama to it, and without taking anything away from what I was actually shown. So I am asking you, whoever is watching this, take a moment, an honest moment, and ask yourself which flame you recognize in your own life right now. Are you tired, poured out, near the end of a long, faithful road? Are you in a season of waiting, being filled quietly for something harder up ahead? Or, and I say this as gently as I know how, because he said it to me with tears, is your flame burning on nothing real underneath? Just activity, just appearance, just words. Whichever one it is, there is still time to be honest about it. That is really the whole point of everything I saw. Not fear, just honesty, and turning back to him while the door is still open. That is what I was shown. That is what I was asked to tell you. I have told it as carefully and as truthfully as I know how, and now it is in your hands and in his.